Hello everyone. On behalf of iACT Global India, I am the representative for today's session, Vinayak Agarwal. I am a PMP, PMI-ACP and an ITL certified, and currently I am a project manager at CenturyLink Technologies, India. And on behalf of iACT Global, today I will be representing session for PMI-ACP as an introductory session, and along with I will be covering basic concepts of project management. Before talking about the PMI-ACP examination, let me tell you something about Agile and Agile software development. I mean, what do you mean by Agile and Agile software development? Agile, if you talk about the dictionary meaning of Agile, it says quickly, lightly, in a nimble way. So Agile software development talks generally about the iterative and an incremental development approach, along with collaboration between team members, as it said, self-organizing, cross-cultural and cross-functional teams. Apart from that, it also promotes adaptive planning, evolutionary development and delivery, time-boxed iterative approach, and encourages rapid and flexible response to change. This is what is adaptive. Though these terms might be feeling new to you, but we will be covering each and every term in the detailed presentation in the next later sessions. So proceeding with the PMI-ACP examination. Well, currently Agile is a hot methodology among the software industries, and if you talk about the certifications currently holding in the market, there are many. One is from the PMI-ACP group, PMI group, which is the PMI-ACP, and Scrum Alliance group, which says about the CSM, Certified Scrum Master. But since the PMI group, which is also equally responsible for the project management professional certification, initiates this ACP, which is Agile Certified Practitioner, in 2012. And it is kind of a not very old certification like PMP, which started in early 1990s. But ACP started only in 2012. So it's only a 2 years or a kind of a 2.5 years old certification. So it's in an evolutionary phase, and with time, PMI-ACP examination get revised and another versions will come. But currently it is not so big deal. You can easily crack the examination if your concepts and fundamentals about the Agile, XP, and other methodologies which are the part of the ACP are well understood and covered by you. So talking about the eligibility criteria and the fees requirements for PMI-ACP examination. I had took this snapshot from the PMI-ACP website, which is the pmi.org. So if you talk about the educational background, it talks about a secondary degree or a high school diploma or a degree, which is a professional or a non-professional. Apart from that, you also need 2,000 hours of a general project management experience in your last 5 years of career. Plus, you also need Agile project experience of 1,500 hours, which is equivalent to approximately 8 to 9 months, considering you work 40 hours a week. And for Agile experience, you need to showcase this experience in your last 3 years of your tenure. And apart from that, you also need 21 PDUs, which is the contact programs of an Agile training, as an eligibility criteria. Just like in PMP, you need 35 PDUs. And one good news is, if you are already a PMP certified, then the second option, which is the general project experience of 2,000 hours, you can elaborate this, and PMI application will only take your Agile experience of 1,500 hours, along with the 21 contact hours. Nothing is free in this world, so definitely you need to pay something as in your fees. For PMI members, it is $435, and non-members, it is $495. If we talk about the exam content and outline, it is a computer-based testing examination at the Prometric centers. Currently, PMI-ACP examination can't be given via paper-based testing, so PBT is not acceptable. Only computer-based testing is optional, is available. And the examination question contains 120 multiple choice question, which carries 4 choices each for every question, and you need to select only one. no multiple selections, only one selection, and there is no negative marking. And to attempt these 120 questions, you will get 3 hours in total. And out of these 120 questions, 20 questions will be pre-test questions, which will be considered as a pre-test data for the PMI group, just to understand and capture the market details and what an individual or a candidate attempt or provide his or her opinion to particular questions. So these 20 questions won't be counted at all, and that 20 questions won't you can't distinguish those 20 questions out of 120. They are equally or a kind of an algorithmically splitted. So you have to attempt all 120 questions, but definitely out of those 120, 20 will not be considered at all, whether they are correct or incorrect. And the passing criteria is not disclosed by the PMI group, but as per my understanding and the awareness, if you are 75% correct, then definitely you will receive your PMI-ACP certificate once you given the examination. Moving further, the exam content outline is splitted across 6 domains. And if we talk about these 6 domains, there are value-driven delivery, stakeholder engagement, boosting team performance practices, adaptive planning, problem detection and resolution, and continuous improvement, which talks about product, process, and people, all 3 equally. Also, the exam score breakdown is splitted across 2 broad sections. One is tools and techniques, and another is knowledge and skills. And if you split knowledge and skills, there are 3 levels inside it: level 1, 2, and level 3. Level 1 comprised of 33% of knowledge and skills, level 2 12%, and level 3 are 5%. And tools and techniques collaborate to 50% of your overall exam score. So that's all about the PMI-ACP as an introduction. Now let me share few basic concepts of project management. So what is the project management? Before moving on to the project management, let me share you about the process. What do you understand by a process? A process is nothing but a simple collection of interrelated work tasks initiated in response to an event that achieves a specific result. What does it mean? If you see the pictorial view, there is an input, there are tools and techniques, and there is an output. So all this together is a process. So every process must have an input, some tools, techniques, skills, knowledge, anything, and ultimately you will receive an output. Just like you prepare a coffee. So what you need for a coffee? For input, you need milk, you need water, you need coffee beans, you need tools and techniques, you will demand utensils, you need a burner, and definitely you will receive an output, which is a coffee. So the process of input, tools and technique is equals to output, altogether is called a process. Now project management is about anything, either it is for project or an operation. But what do you mean by project? A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or a service or a result. And projects are temporary in nature. That is, they are defined, have a definite beginning and an end date or a time. A project can involve a single person, single organization also, or a multiple organization or persons also. Just like an example, construction of a house is a project, because definitely you will not build the house throughout your life. It definitely have a start date and an end date. So a project, and also it is a unique. The house belongs to you only. That is a unique house. So either a product, service, document, artifacts, or any result is a project. How we distinguish project from operation? Operations are the ongoing execution. That is the same output provided the same repetitive service or processes or steps. So operations are permanent in nature. They don't have a definitive end or beginning date. If they do so, then they will turn into a project. The example for an operation is a manufacturing of any production unit, examples car. So if you design a car, that is a project because you have to design that particular car in some time frame. But if you produce that car on a daily basis or a monthly basis or a quarterly basis in equal numbers or non-equal numbers, then it is a manufacturing plant, which is a kind of an operation. The same repetitive task you do every time to have an output. So if you talk about the common similarities between the project and operation, they both are performed by people, they both have a constraint of limited resources, and planned, executed, and controlled both are. So typical project constraints are scope, time, cost, resources, risk, and quality. Moving further, we have project. Just we talk about project. Similarly, we have a program and a portfolio. If you see this triangular view, at the lowest hierarchy, you will find the project management that talks only about the project, an individual project, and if you club these individual projects, they will come into a program category. That is an integrated delivery, which will be handled by a program or a project dependencies or a manager. Definitely all will be governance, and you will have a portfolio management at the top. So a program is a group of related projects. See the word related. Related projects managed in a coordinated way to get benefits. And the benefits are for all the stakeholders involved for a program or a portfolio or a project. That is the organization at the top, middle management, and definitely at the stakeholders, which are the project related direct impacted persons. And portfolio refers to the group of related or non-related projects. So a portfolio can be related to a related project or a non-related projects also, and equally for the programs. A portfolio may consist of several non-related projects without having a single program. So at top we have a portfolio, then we have a program, and then we have a project management. Just like project management office, the term is PMO, the project management office. It is a kind of a central body or an entity assigned for all the various responsibilities for a coordinated management of a project. So what all PMOs in the bucket of PMO comes into? Number one, structure and visibility, that the PMO member have a structure and visibility for all the governance and the top level management vision. Then we have the common processes and methods. It's the PMO responsibility to make sure that every project or a program or the sub-projects have a common processes and methods. They are using the definite tools, and on-time trainings, mentors, and supports are being provided by the PMO group. They also check the health of a project in terms of metrics. Metrics like defect density, productivity, effort variance, and many other, depending on how you segregate your project in terms of health, to monitor it on a regular or a quarterly or a monthly basis. And definitely apart from that, the management reporting. So PMO is responsible for all these. So in nutshell, processes, methodology, and guidance is equals to projects management office. Moving on to the next slide, we have a project life cycle. So definitely, since project have a starting date and an end date, so definitely it will go through some life cycle. And these life cycle will generally talks about the 5 main phases, which is one, the initiation phase, then the planning phase, then execution, monitoring and control, and finally we have the closure of a project. So if we talk about the project initiation, it talks about the starting of a project. Then planning talks about organizing and preparing. Monitoring and control, as the name suggests, it is just to monitor and track and control if some parameters goes up or down, just to monitor and bring back the project in his best correct way. And then we have the execution. Definitely, once we have the execution, then only we have the project monitoring and control. And finally, we have the closure. That is the closing of a project. And when we talk about the closing, it's kind of a retrospective meetings in which we talk about what are the gains and what are the losses and what we have learned from this project, so that we can follow the similar life cycle into our next iteration or subsequent projects. I have used the term iteration because it is more of an agile, and agile always talks about the iteration or a sprints, which I will be discussing you further in our next slides. Moving further, let me share you this graph, which is of a project life cycle characteristics. So suppose if we plot a graph between time and a degree in terms of a project start and end date, then you can see from this graph that the cost of a change at the very initial stage of a project is too less. But definitely, as the time grows, the degree of changing a cost or a particular requirement, cost of change, goes so high. Similarly, the involvement or the stakeholder influence, which corresponds to risk and uncertainty, they all are very high at the start of a project because you don't have any vision of a project. You don't have any proper planning, initialization, execution, and monitoring control. So all these risks and uncertainty, along with the stakeholder influence, is too high at the project start date. But once you are at the end of your project, definitely these going to shrink and ultimately reduce to zero. And once it's zero and your product is ready, your project is completed. So this is the project life cycle characteristics. Moving further, we have project phases. So what do you mean by project phases? A project phase is a kind of an, you split your project into phases. Suppose you have initialization flows, closure phase, monitoring and control phase, and any rest of the other 5 components which we have just discussed. So projects are split between 2 main phases. One is multi-phase and a single phase. Single phase, as the name suggests, is a single phase, that is only one task. Multi-phases again have a 3 split up. We have one is sequential, overlapping, and parallel. You can see these 3 on the right side of your screen. There are 3 tabular forms. One is showcasing sequential relationship. So we have a time period of 1, 2, and 3, and project phases, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So all are in a sequential fashion. If you talk about the second one, then it is an overlapping relation. You can see that phase 1 is split from 1 to 2, but phase 2 is split from 2 to 3. So 2 is an overlapping period in which we have phase 1 also at the end and starting of the phase 2. And phase 3 is the kind of an overlying between phase 2, which is at the time period 3. So, and the third one is the parallel relationship. Parallel relationship that the phase 1 and 2 are both working on the same time slot in a parallel way, parallel fashion. So we have the agile methodologies. So before talking about the agile methodologies, let's talk about the traditional life cycle models, which is one is the waterfall model. So waterfall model, as the name suggests, it's from the top to down approach. So we have, I'm just taking the examples from the software industry. So requirements at the top, we have a design, the next subsequent phase, then implementation phase, verification phase, and finally the maintenance, which is an operation. So we have a waterfall phase. So advantages of, you talk about the waterfall, we have few advantages. It is very simple and most common and easy to use among the software developments and in the software industry. And it is generally work well for the smaller projects which are well understood in terms of requirements. That is, you don't foresee any creep in requirements. It's kind of a stagnant view. You have the vision clear with you, which ship you need to design. So it's a kind of very simple approach. And also it is very cost effective because time spent early in the software production cycle can lead to a greater economy, definitely at the later stages of that, which we have just taken in our earlier graph, this graph. So you can see the cost of changes is too less at the earlier frame of time, and definitely it shoots up once you are in the progressive phase of your project. But definitely waterfall approaches have few disadvantages also. So it is a kind of the crucial disadvantage of this model is that testing is understood as a one-time action at the end of the project, just before the release of the operation. And the test is seen as a final inspection and analogy to a manufacturing inspection before handling over the product to the customer. Higher amounts of risks and uncertainty, and inflexible, poor model for complex and object-oriented projects. Just like if you don't have the vision or the requirements clear at the early stage of your project, definitely this model won't work very well. The second is the life cycle model. If you talk about is an iterative approach. This is nothing. It's just kind of a waterfall approach, but you have splitted your project in iterations. Suppose we have an iteration 1, iteration 2, and iteration 3. So once iteration 1 is completed, then only the design for the iteration 1, iteration 2 will start, and subsequently design for the 3 will start once we have the analysis for the iteration 2 is completed. So quickly have a look to the advantages and disadvantages. Building and improving the product step by step, hence can track the defects at too early stage. This will avoid the downward flow of the defects. So definitely, if you have the defect in the iteration 1, it won't be cascade to the iteration 2. Once the iteration 1 is completed, then only we will start the iteration 2. But in the waterfall, if there is a defect at the early stage of the model, you will find that defect at the later stage of your, and that will subsequently lead to higher cost, because defect fixing at the later stages of a project is too costly. The second is, in iterative model can get the reliable user feedback when presenting sketches and blueprints. So at every end of iteration, you will have a blueprint on kind of a demo to the stakeholder or the customer or the product owner, and you will get some feedback from him or her, and you will implement those feedback. It is a negative one, you can rectify the same in your next iteration. So kind of an iterative model, you will have a third one is less time is spent on documentation, and iterative approach, more talk about the more time is given for designing. And disadvantages, each phase of an iteration is rigid with no overlaps. Since in waterfall we have few of the overlaps also, but in iterative we don't have any overlaps. Costly system architecture or design issues may arise because not all requirements are gathered upfront for the entire life cycle in a project. And the last disadvantage is difficult to obtain customer feedback. Another model is an incremental model. So project incremental model, if you can see, I have divided this into elements of analysis, design, code, test, and release only. So advantages is quick feedback, loop from business stakeholders, focus on customer feedback, customer feels the product early. So definitely if the customer feels the product early, they will provide the feedback after the demos early to you, and you can have the chance to rectify them as an incremental fashion. Disadvantages, scheduling of the development is difficult with incremental development. You can't schedule all the iterations in a one go. So you have the iteration 1 planning first, and once you have the start of the iteration 2, then you can plan iteration 2. You can't plan all throughout the n number of iterations in a one go. And if you plan so, definitely you need to replan it at the subsequent iterations. Tracking and monitoring is difficult in increment. Testing needs to be exhaustive, each component or an element or a part. So these are the disadvantages. So all these disadvantages of waterfall, iterative, and incremental are clubbed together into an agile framework, which is the adaptive life cycle model. So it talks about combination of everything. You will have an iterative approach, you will have an adaptive approach, you will have a waterfall inside every iteration, you will have an overlapping phases also, but you don't plan everything at one go. You will have iteration 1 planning, iteration 2 planning, iteration 3 planning, and so on. And you have retrospectives after each and every iteration. So once you have an iteration 1, you close that iteration with a retrospective meeting. You have some best practices or lessons learned from those iterations, and you will implement or inject those best practices or learning into the iteration 2, and subsequently it's a kind of an adaptive. Adaptive in terms of the developers or the softwares or the managers who all are involved into the project. They modify or tweak this processes, methodology or framework to the best into their needs, so as to have a very productive and effective mechanism to deliver the project or a product or an artifact on time with best quality is an adaptive approach. So all this covered is in adaptive. So that's all. Thank you very much for your time. See you soon in another session of Agile ACP. Thank you very much.